Hello everyone, my name is İlkani Tanyal. Um, I'm a student in social psychology class and I have prepared for information media about effective polarization during the 2020 presidential election. So before I get into too deep of the theory, I would like to give some background. So if we look at the literature and also the reports, we see that the political polarization among Americans has grown rapidly in the last 40 years. This gap is huge comparing to all the other countries, for example, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, and Germany. However, um, the polarization, what I mean by polarization is beyond opinion disagreements. Even though the dispute between the ideological beliefs are inevitable, this increasing hatred between the political groups challenges one of the fundamental principles of the democracy, which is the ability to compromise. So I want to elaborate on that because especially in 2020, this gap between Democrats and Republicans got even wider. So first, I mean, let's take a look at the figure from the Pew Research Center. Um, if you look at all the other countries, the gap between what the with the governing coalition supporters and not supporters are highest for the United States on the topic of the coronavirus outbreak. So that shows something that there is a really cliff between the two parties. And beyond that, both Democrats and Republican partisans are calling out each other. They blaming the other party members as hypocritical, selfish, um, more close-minded. So this, let's say this phenomenon of animosity between the parties is known as the affective polarization. So in other words, the affective polarization is referred to increasing dislike and distrust which people have towards the persons with opposing political views. Um, so this dislike and distrust to opposing party is rooted originally in social identity, because Homo sapiens is like to group like to belong to any group, and this is called like group affiliation. So this is important for Homo sapiens, and one way of to gain this group affiliation is the partisanship, because partisanship is a particularly salient and powerful identifier for one person, probably like beginning of the early younger age. So that's why it's grown with us, and that's how we identify ourselves as either Republican or Democrats. So, oops. So beyond this, I mean, we will talk about 2020 election, right? So why this gap is increased in 2020 particularly? Because besides the pandemic, and it's already very big reason to define this a traumatic year, but besides that, in 2020, there's a historic and traumatic year for particularly the United States. I mean, there are lots of events that both both Democrats and Republicans feel threatened or worried about or have the anxiety. For example, presidential impeachment, pandemic, economic collapse, racial unrest, civil unrest. So all these events are bring the perception of threat and uncertainty. And when we think about this 2020 problem together with the affective polarization, I would like to explain some of the literature that how this uncertainty and threat make people effectively polarized. So one way to explain this is terror management theory, because terror management theory examines how individuals respond when there's a reminder of their mortality salience. So this is important because um, we are um, we are mortal, and when we remind us, this brings us anxiety and terror of meaninglessness. And one way of prevent this anxiety and terror of meaninglessness is motivated to hold on what you have already known. Um, and this way, people negate the uncertainty and situate their self-esteem. So if you think this in terms of um, what the liberal knows and what the conservative knows, there's another theory that I can talk about, because to negate this uncertainty and situate the self-esteem, one is to adopt more conservative beliefs due to due to desire for certainty, like the authoritarian theory, and the other one is prevention focus of the both liberals and conservatives by strengthening their own worldviews. So if you look at the authoritarian personality, this is similar to terror management theory. Um, I think only difference is like how this is argued, because the authoritarian personality theory is based on one's humiliated and depreciated childhood, whereas the terror management theory is argued that mortality salience in um, meaninglessness make people more hold on what they have already known. While considering on the lens of the terror management theory, this doesn't mean that um, this anxiety and uncertainty will not affect, or let's say will not affect authoritarian personality arguments, because the reason is that the authoritarian personality theory is rooted with conservatism, because this is a theory that argue that very people for being very hierarchical and holding what they already know more extremely to negate the uncertainty. So that's why this has been linked to conservatism. So from this lens, when there's a threat, one's reminded they're on mortality salience, or there's an anxiety, of course the conservatives might expect to hold down what they have already known. So this is one way, and the other way is I would like to mention is the two polarities model. If you look at the social psychology literature on particular powerful way to prescribe the appropriate relationships, it is between the self and the others. So, and social scientists in various fields have repeatedly tried to prescribe these relationships. Um, and there's like one particular one that they actually mentioned in the class, that Marcus and Kitayama mentioned the construct names of independence and interdependence. However, the name and the construct is different. In the essence, they all argue the same thing, that how people perceive themselves in relation to the others. In the political context, recent theoretical perspective on the moral values of liberals and conservatives have extended this model of ideological differences. And they offer the motivational underpinnings of conservatism and liberalism. So what I mean by that, independence and if you look at the independence and interdependence self-construals, we see that the interdependence is more reference to self, feelings, actions, and various thoughts, whereas the interdependent is being more referent to others' thoughts, feelings, and actions. So in that perspective, the political context is in the political context, prior research linked conservatism with the independence of self-constraints, whereas the liberals are linked to their interdependent self-constraints. So the part of the reason that why conservatism linked to independence, because the protection from threat, and the way that conservatives prioritize social order and protecting themselves from threat, they focused on more in the in-group and themselves and be more vigilant to the boundaries between the other groups. So from the election perspective, they becoming more extreme on the conservative values and more extreme on the Republican side, whereas more vigilant boundaries towards the Democrats. On the other hand, the core values of the liberalism is focused on social justice and providing for others. So that's why the liberals are more focused on the interdependence, which is being permissible to boundaries between others, because it's important for liberals. The central argument of the liberalism is to focus on the um, social justice and providing others. So the distinction is, I just want to make the distinction. This doesn't mean that the liberals are not independent, they don't care about themselves, or the conservatives do not care about others. Um, it's it's the distinction here is both conservatives and liberals have some sort of both independence and interdependence. But the main distinction is that the liberals are more permissible to boundaries between the groups. So in other words, there is a relationship that in an outer group that they are not necessarily in harmony and affection among the people they are engaged in. So that's why they're becoming more extreme on their values and their politics to to bring social justice to the world. And with that, doing that, they probably becoming more stronger on their own views, and and that's how the gap between this Republicans and the um, Democrats are being increased. So I hope that it was helpful, what I explained so far. Um, I just want to thank you for your time and listening. That's pretty much I will talk about. Thank you so much.